Right, let's take you back to our lead story. Several months ago, scathing allegations were made against Health Minister Dr Zweli Mkhize relating to an irregular tender awarded to his close associates. He and his family were said to have benefited. The Special Investigating Unit says it has referred evidence in the Digital Vibes contract saga to the National Prosecuting Authorities as it tries to recoup 150 million rand in payments made to the communications firm. The SIU filed papers at the Special Tribunal, arguing for the payments to be declared invalid and irregular. Now, in court papers, a picture was painted of massive fraud perpetrated by suspended Health Minister Dr Zweli Mkhize and his associates. How will these findings possibly affect Dr Zweli Mkhize's political career? To answer that question and more, we're joined by a political analyst at the University of the Free State, Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Very good morning to you, Prof. Thank you for your time. I suppose the big question around the shock and the scandal follows that of the health minister's political career. Where does it place him?
Hi, good morning, and good morning to the crew and South Africans. Very shocking. A couple of months ago, some of us still had hope that this is not the case. Because remember, Dr. Mkhize were one of those public figures which represented what I will call the voice of reason within the African National Congress, at least a glimmer of hope that he is clean, and this is very shocking. And once again, I think this is also indicative of the rot that is currently going on in our public service, and very unacceptable. And now 2 months ago, the question was still that he may be in the background and he might come back. But after the SIU report, it's going to be very difficult for the African National Congress and the government of South Africa to employ him in any position. But we all know with politics, there might be behind the back negotiations going on. And I've also been asked the question, why is the president taking so long to act? Remember, Dr. Mkhize has been an ally of the president, and he also has to be very cautious how he deals with that. But in any normal circumstances, there should only be a right and a wrong, and when somebody has wrong, action should be taken.
And, you know, with all the question marks and the health minister saying and denying previously any wrongdoing in this matter, and also the back and forth about a messenger who may have stolen money from him, it really also speaks to the credibility of the health minister and the perceptions around the type of trust which has since been broken down.
Yeah, well, the whole issue of trust being easily eroded, this is how our public representatives have always responded, that they don't know about those decisions were taken somewhere else. But I think they are in these positions and they know the nitty-gritties around issues of corruption and how they can be compromised. And it's always, every time it's a son or a daughter or a relative. I mean, the Digital Vibes one, without even the report from the SIU, already I think alarm bells were rang because of, and I often say this is a javelin throwing tactic where somebody is employed today in a public entity resigns, and 2-3 months down the line lands a tender with the very same representative or, you know, government officials. And that is unacceptable. I think the minister shoot himself in the foot. And this is what is also, you know, a tendency amongst our politicians. They can't come out in public and say, I've made a mistake and I will bear the consequences of whatever action is taken. And I think that is why many South Africans will not be sympathetic with what is currently happening towards our former or current suspended Minister of Health.
Professor, I'd love for us to continue this conversation immediately after a very short break. So I'd like to ask for you to stay on the line as we will continue this conversation shortly after this. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. We continue our conversation around the saga and the controversies on the Digital Vibes matter. And of course, speaking on the role and the future The political career of suspended Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize is still in conversation with the University of the Free State Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Professor, you were speaking about how, the perceptions will be made of the suspended health minister in the public, and you were saying that perhaps it would be easier for the public to reach some sort of level of understanding on what really happened if there was an admission of guilt here. But this one will be quite a hard one to swallow, because 150 million rand is a substantial amount here, especially as the SIU is severely critical of the manner in which the Digital Vibes communications firm clinched the deal. And of course, I think the most shocking part is that the Department of Health picked Digital Vibes over one of its vastly more experienced rivals, which offered a significantly lower rate.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, but South Africans do not realize how our collective inactivity of submissiveness contributes to situations like this. Because after everything that has happened within the African National Congress, we all know the ANC is divided into two camps. We know that, even if people say there are no factions within the African National Congress. And here comes somebody, as I've indicated, and I say this with the utmost respect, still engaged in that. So even the minister or whoever is close to him thought that they will get away with that. And the question is, if you look at our bloated government system, it's where is the accounting officers? What kind of people do universities, some of us train when it comes to ethical morality about speaking out? Because I don't think the minister, whoever just came and say, offer us the tender. There might have been other people who have involved, officials, professionals, accountants who have been trained at universities. And I think that also raises another question about the kind of training that we provide. But I think what is also very fundamental, even if the ANC would want to treat this in any other way, I think there will be now, from the so-called RET forces within the African National Congress, a whole hullabaloo that the president should also take strong action, especially if the NPA is now going to be involved, and this is going to land in front of, of course, very interesting scenarios. And in South Africa, we have been bombarded with own goals by the African National Congress almost on a weekly basis, and it's very unfortunate that it was one of the key members within the Cyril Ramaphosa camp.
You speak of President Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course the chaos and unrest that followed about 2 weeks ago, that of course led to looting and the disruption of businesses in South Africa, got us talking and looking at the effects of what might be a cabinet reshuffle, should the president be willing to entertain that. And we've just recently learned that it's a conversation that he's open to. Do you imagine that Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize's name would be one that would be earmarked for a cabinet reshuffle, or mentioned there when the president eventually gets down to perhaps reshuffling his cabinet?
Yeah, well, at least and even people should not misunderstand me here. I think the unrest perhaps also gave the president an opportunity, if he wants to get rid of other, reshuffle any other ministers. But remember, the president does not have a choice. If President Cyril Ramaphosa means what he has been stating, to say he is going to fight, to take the fight heads on, the fight on corruption, then the Dr. Zweli Mkhize one is actually an easier one. He does not have an option. Even with all these serious allegations and the SIU report, you don't need a court of law to make a pronouncement on this matter. So definitely, I will be very surprised if the name of Dr. Mkhize is not on there. And in terms of reshuffling, I don't think anything will happen with the ministers who are in the security cluster, the Minister of Police. He might just move them to other ministries if he wants to, because we've seen our president has been very cautious when it comes to dealing with, such sensitive matters. And remember, we're not very far from an elective conference. So from a political point of view, you don't want to disrupt too many of your own allies within the African National Congress. You will need them because we've seen the fierce battle we have already started now also with the Nkandla and the Jacob Zuma saga.
And, you speak about what you imagine would be possible when it comes to, perhaps the easier option and the gate being opened to Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize being given the boot in this instance. But you also mentioned the elections. What bigger headaches do you imagine lie ahead for President Cyril Ramaphosa? Because it's almost like playing a very strategic game of chess.
It's very difficult. I've got utmost great respect for President Cyril Ramaphosa. Even before he ascended to power, some of us were already predicting he will come in. He's going to be that president that will face insurmountable pressure. Because remember, you've got a grouping of people whose entire careers are dependent on some of the decisions that are being taken by an NEC of the African National Congress led by somebody. With all his mistakes and perhaps his political posturing, we have what in President Cyril Ramaphosa, a very formidable leader. But all these other side issues, I think he is going through a lot. I mean, as I've indicated, there was also been concerns during the past 2 days to say, but why is he not acting? And I don't think presidents necessarily react within 2-3 days from any report, whether it is a commission of inquiry report. They take time, and it's very difficult. This is now a very difficult issue for the president when it comes to dealing with his own and even other members. I don't think the president is enjoying taking action against other members from the RT groupings or whoever within the African National Congress. But at the end of the day, if he wants to go down in history to be known as a leader who at least made an attempt to fight corruption, I think his name will be up there. And if down memory lane after 5 or 10 years, we will also say he was one of those presidents that faced one of the most difficult challenges, COVID-19 and all that. But I think this one, and if you look at what is happening within the African National Congress, it is a very difficult one, and especially if you look at a time frame towards the next elective conference. It's going to be very difficult decision for him to make in terms of who is he going to change. But there should also be consequences for our security clusters. It's unacceptable what happened in Durban, where you see a police in uniform but being unable to do or to react. In a nutshell, it's an indication of the power and the decisiveness of the state. And clearly, in future, this will definitely should never ever happen. And I think the president will also have to labor and reflect on that. But having to make a decision who to juggle around at this critical moment, I think that for me, it's one of the most difficult decisions that he will have to make.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in on that conversation and for your views.